One of the big concerns during the day, of course, has been whether the budget last night's actually going to fuel inflation. I mean, I've seen every view on this today. There's a lot of claims that it might indeed lead to more interest rate rises next year, perhaps as many as two. Let's have a listen to Treasurer Jim Chalmers denying all that today.
Really the defining influence on our decisions around the cost of living package, our decisions around the growth package and the historic restraint that we've shown in spending has been this inflation challenge. And we are supremely confident that the budget that we handed down last night will take some of these cost of living pressures off without adding to inflation.
Well, the only bank, the Commonwealth Bank, was the only bank that last time got the interest rate rise tipped correctly. Gareth Edey is that bank's head of Australian economics. He joins me from Sydney. If you had to answer in a word, Gareth, whether the budget from last night is likely to add fuel to the inflation fire, what would you say?
G'day, Steve. Look, the single word would be no, but I should probably expand on that. I think the budget last night wasn't disinflationary. In other words, it's not putting downward pressure on prices growth, but then by the same token, it's not adding to inflationary pressures in the economy. And so at the bank, our assessment basically of the budget is that it hasn't shifted the dial in terms of the economic outlook. We've maintained our profile for inflation from here. We think it'll actually come down a little bit quicker than the government's expecting and the Reserve Bank. And we haven't changed our call in terms of the outlook for interest rates as well. So on the whole, there wasn't any surprises to us in the budget. The government is not playing a major role in terms of demand management in the economy. But I think from an inflationary perspective, the budget last night didn't put further upward pressure on demand in the economy.
So when you look at that graph on inflation that we saw in the document where, it's sitting at 7 now, and I think they're predicting that by this time next year it will be down in the 3s. Gareth, do you think that's a realistic assessment?
Yeah, look, we do. We think inflation's going to end up coming down relatively swiftly. That annual rate takes a little bit of time to come down because the annual rate is really a function of 4 quarterly changes. And so you've got to wait for these bigger numbers that were in the data from last year to drop out. But when you think about what the Reserve Bank's delivered in terms of the number of rate hikes they've put through, how quickly they've put them through, some 375 basis points in 12 months, that's going to have a really big impact in slowing the economy from here. And in fact, there's some organic tightening still to come in the pipeline to the extent that there's a lot of home borrowers out there who are sitting on these ultra low fixed rate loans that'll be rolling off into much higher floating rate mortgages as we go through this year. They'll then, by extension, have to change their spending decisions, and then you'll get that slowdown in the economy. As the economy slows, you'll see prices growth slow. A lot of the inflation that we really got up until this point was because of that huge fiscal stimulus to deal with the pandemic. The impact of that is starting to wash through, and we actually agree that inflation will end up coming down relatively swiftly over the next 12 to 18 months.